Welcome back to US Visa News Hub. I'm your host, Mr. Burhan, and today we are breaking down one of the most consequential immigration votes in recent American history. And if you have a green card application pending, a visa, or any immigration matter in the United States, the next few minutes could directly affect your future. A single Senate vote just moved $70 billion in immigration enforcement funding closer to becoming law. Not a speech, not a tweet, a vote. And the question every immigrant, visa holder, green card applicant, and asylum seeker needs answered right now is simple. What does this actually mean for you? The Senate has passed a sweeping immigration enforcement funding package, and this is not a minor budget adjustment that can be dismissed. We are talking about $70 billion tied to immigration enforcement, border security, detention capacity, agency operations, and Department of Homeland Security resources. When Washington places this level of funding behind a single priority, it is not just sending a political message, it is preparing the machinery of government to act on a much larger scale. But before fear takes over, and before anyone assumes their green card has been canceled or their visa is suddenly at risk, it is absolutely critical to understand what this bill actually does, what it does not do, and why the next step in Congress may carry even greater weight than the Senate vote itself. Right now, three completely different narratives are circulating online simultaneously. One group is saying this bill marks the beginning of mass deportations. Another is warning that lawful immigrants will be swept up in enforcement. A third group claims green card applicants should be in immediate panic mode. And scattered across social media are posts written as though this bill has already been signed into final law. None of those versions is fully accurate. The truth requires context. And that context is exactly what this video is here to provide. The first major point that every viewer of US Visa News Hub must understand is that while the Senate vote was a major political moment, it does not mean the entire immigration system was rewritten overnight. At its core, this bill is a funding measure. In plain terms, lawmakers are attempting to give immigration enforcement agencies a dramatically larger budget so they can enforce existing immigration law with far greater intensity. That distinction is critical. This bill does not eliminate family-based green cards. It does not end employment-based immigration pathways. It does not erase citizenship eligibility for those who already qualify. It does not dissolve adjustment of status procedures under current law. However, and this is the part that matters most, the fact that it does not directly change eligibility rules does not mean immigrants should treat it as harmless news. Money changes enforcement. Money expands agency capacity. Money builds more detention facilities. Money puts more officers, more technology, and more operational power behind policies that are already on the books. That is where this story becomes genuinely serious. The Senate debate itself was anything but routine. Lawmakers argued for hours. Voting continued late into the night. Amendments were introduced and debated. Party divisions became visible in real time. Republicans largely united behind the bill as a statement of support for President Trump's immigration enforcement agenda. Democrats opposed the package forcefully, raising serious concerns about oversight, detention practices, enforcement priorities, and the potential human cost to immigrant communities across the country. Even within the Republican caucus, some members raised concerns about controversial provisions attached to the broader package, proving this was not a smooth or ceremonial vote. It was a contested political battle. One detail that received surprisingly little attention involves provisions that had nothing to do with green cards or visas directly. A Justice Department-related fund drew sharp criticism from lawmakers who described it as politically sensitive. The disagreement over this provision intensified the already heated debate. Separately, language involving security funding for a proposed White House ballroom found its way into the package, a provision that drew immediate backlash from critics who argued it had no business being attached to an immigration enforcement bill. After procedural pressure mounted, that language was reportedly stripped from the bill before it advanced. So when you hear that the Senate passed this package, the full picture is this. It passed after a genuinely messy, contentious, and complicated political fight, not a calm, bipartisan agreement. Now let us get directly to the question that the US Visa News Hub audience cares most about. Does this bill put green card applicants at risk? Based on all current public reporting available at the time of this video, the bill does not appear to directly eliminate any green card category. Family-based immigration pathways appear intact. Employment-based immigration does not appear to have been dismantled. Adjustment of status procedures do not appear to have been automatically canceled. Citizenship eligibility for those who already qualify under existing law does not appear to have been erased. That should provide a measure of reassurance. But here is where I need every viewer to stay focused, because this is the point where many people make a critical mistake. The absence of a direct legal change to green card eligibility is not the same thing as being completely unaffected by this bill. There is a fundamental difference between rewriting immigration law and dramatically increasing immigration enforcement capacity. If you have a clean case, valid status, accurate filings, no misrepresentation, no criminal history, no unresolved immigration violations, this bill may not directly alter the legal requirements for your application. But if your situation involves complications such as prior overstays, missed immigration court dates, removal orders, fraud concerns, criminal history, or unresolved status issues, a more aggressive enforcement environment can become highly relevant to your case. That is precisely why immigration attorneys across the country are watching this legislation so carefully. Not because every green card is automatically denied, but because when enforcement agencies receive significantly more resources, the government gains expanded capacity to find, detain, investigate, and prioritize individuals who are already considered removable under laws that have been in place for years. For undocumented immigrants, the potential impact is likely the most direct and immediate. A $70 billion enforcement package could fund detention facilities, border operations, transportation logistics, staffing increases, surveillance technology, and interagency coordination on a scale not previously seen. If this funding is ultimately signed into law, the government would have considerably more ability to carry out enforcement operations. That could translate into more arrests in targeted areas, greater detention capacity, more resources for locating individuals with final removal orders, and faster operational responses across multiple enforcement contexts. I want to be careful here, because this does not mean every undocumented person faces automatic detention starting tomorrow. Enforcement has always depended on agency priorities, available resources, individual case circumstances, court status, and local conditions. But it does mean the government may be positioning itself for a much more aggressive operational posture, and that is a risk that immigrant communities must take seriously and prepare for thoughtfully. Visa holders, including those on tourist visas, student visas, work visas, exchange visas, and fiancé visas, are also asking whether this bill puts their status in direct jeopardy. Based on current information, the answer is that the bill does not appear to directly cancel any of those visa categories, but the indirect concern is real. In an environment where enforcement agencies are better funded and better staffed, compliance issues receive far more scrutiny. Visa overstays, unauthorized employment, failure to maintain valid student status, working outside the authorized terms of a visa, and inconsistencies in immigration records could all become more consequential in a stronger enforcement climate. The message for visa holders is not panic, it is disciplined compliance. Verify that your documents are in order, file required address updates, understand every condition attached to your visa category. Avoid making legal decisions based on social media posts or YouTube comment sections. And if your case involves any complication, seek qualified legal guidance before taking any action that could affect your immigration future. Asylum seekers are also asking whether this bill rewrites asylum law. At the time of this report, it is being characterized primarily as an enforcement funding package rather than a substantive overhaul of asylum policy. It may not directly dismantle the asylum system as it currently exists. However, enforcement funding has a real effect on how the asylum system operates in practice. Border processing speeds, detention placement decisions, court resource availability, and agency operational priorities can all shift when funding levels change significantly. More detention resources could affect where asylum seekers are held while their claims are processed. More border funding could influence how quickly agencies respond at points of entry. More DHS operational capacity could shape the government's approach to asylum processing in ways that are not written directly into the bill's text. There is one more critical piece of context that every U.S. Visa News Hub viewer must understand before drawing any final conclusions about this news. The Senate vote is not the final step. This legislation must still pass through the House of Representatives. The House can approve the bill as written, modify it substantially, attach new provisions, delay consideration, or create an entirely new round of political confrontation. The final version of this legislation may look very different from what the Senate passed. Funding levels could be adjusted. Controversial provisions could be added or removed under House pressure. Oversight requirements could be strengthened or weakened depending on the outcome of negotiations. And if the House makes changes, the bill may need to return to the Senate before it can reach the President's desk for signature. If you encounter any claim online stating that this bill is already final law, treat that claim with serious skepticism. Senate passage is significant. It moves this proposal meaningfully closer to enactment, but the legislative process is not complete. The most important political battle may still lie ahead in the House, where the composition of the chamber and the political dynamics are different from the Senate. The outcome there will determine how large this enforcement package ultimately becomes, what specific programs receive funding, whether oversight provisions are included, and how quickly the government gains access to these resources. Supporters of this legislation argue that it is long overdue. They contend that ICE, Border Patrol, and the broader DHS infrastructure have been chronically underfunded and understaffed, and that stronger resources are necessary to enforce immigration laws that are already on the books, secure the border effectively, remove individuals with final orders of deportation, and fulfill the mandate of President Trump's enforcement agenda. From their perspective, this is not an expansion of government power beyond its current legal authority. It is a restoration of the capacity needed to exercise that authority properly. Critics see the situation in fundamentally different terms. They argue that a $70 billion enforcement package without adequate oversight mechanisms could lead to sweeping deportation operations, the expansion of an already troubled detention system, the targeting of communities that include long-term residents, workers, students, and families, and a chilling effect on immigrant communities that extends far beyond those with actual legal vulnerabilities. They believe the scale of this funding increase carries serious risks that go beyond what the bill's text alone can convey. Here at US Visa News Hub, Mr. Burhan's commitment is to give you the full picture, not to generate fear, and not to dismiss legitimate concerns. Much of the immigration content circulating online right now falls into one of two traps. Either it presents every legislative development as immediate catastrophe, or it dismisses everything as politically motivated noise until a bill is formally signed. Both approaches fail the people who actually need accurate information. The reality, as I have laid it out in this video, is more nuanced. This bill does not appear to directly cancel green card categories or lawful visa statuses based on current reporting. But it could meaningfully expand the government's enforcement capacity if it becomes law. For individuals with clean cases and compliant immigration histories, the direct legal impact may be limited. For individuals with complicated histories, unresolved violations, or pending enforcement matters, the environment this bill creates could carry genuine and serious consequences. The practical steps are straightforward. Know your immigration status in detail. Understand your deadlines and upcoming filing obligations. Keep organized copies of all your immigration documents. Do not miss immigration court dates under any circumstances. Do not ignore USCIS correspondence or notices. Do not assume that old immigration problems have quietly resolved themselves over time. And do not rely on informal legal advice from social media platforms or online comment sections. In a more aggressive enforcement environment, small, unaddressed issues can escalate into major problems with lasting consequences. To summarize the key facts clearly, the Senate has passed a major immigration enforcement funding bill. It is not final law yet. It does not appear to directly eliminate green card programs or lawful visa categories based on current reporting. It could significantly increase enforcement activity if it becomes final law. Undocumented immigrants and individuals with prior immigration violations face the greatest potential risk in a strengthened enforcement environment. Visa holders who are fully compliant with the terms of their status face lower but still real indirect risks. Panic is not the appropriate response. Awareness, preparation, and informed legal guidance are. The House of Representatives now holds the next decisive vote. What happens there will determine the final scope and strength of this enforcement package, and that outcome could shape the immigration enforcement landscape in the United States for years to come. This is not the end of the story. For millions of people with green card petitions, visa applications, asylum claims, work permits, and family-based immigration cases still in process, the coming weeks may bring developments that directly affect their futures. Stay informed, stay organized, and if your case has any complexity, invest in qualified legal guidance now rather than after circumstances change. The information presented in this video by Mr. Burhan and U.S. Visa News Hub is intended for general informational and educational purposes only. Nothing in this video constitutes legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is formed by watching or engaging with this content. Immigration law is complex, fact-specific, and subject to change. Individual circumstances vary significantly, and the impact of any legislation on a specific case depends on the unique details of that case. U.S. Visa News Hub strongly encourages all viewers with active immigration matters to consult a licensed and qualified immigration attorney before making any decisions. Do not rely solely on news coverage, social media, or YouTube content, including this channel, for legal guidance that could affect your immigration status or future. Thank you for watching U.S. Visa News Hub. I'm Mr. Burhan. Stay informed, stay prepared, and we will see you in the next update.